Hello class, in this video we're going to learn how to construct scatterplots. The learning intention of this video is for us to learn how to construct a scatterplot manually as well as with a CAS calculator. In this particular chapter, we're looking at bivariate data, and as you may recall from the previous video, we said that bivariate data involves two sets of variables, and we often display this numerical information using a scatterplot. So I've got an example of a scatterplot down below, and this is probably something that you're already familiar with. And I want to remind you all that when you're dealing with bivariate data or scatterplots, our aim is to analyze, compare, and explain what type of correlation or relationship that may exist between these two variables. To draw a scatterplot, all we simply need to do is plot the points so that we can visualize and see what relationship may exist between these two variables. There are a couple of features that I need you guys to be aware of when you're drawing your scatterplot. The first thing that I need you to understand is that whenever we're plotting the explanatory variable, this must always be plotted on the horizontal axis. In contrast, the response variable is always going to be plotted on the vertical axis. Our completed scatterplot must always include labels for each of our axes, and it's really important that you use the correct scale when you're drawing your scatterplot as well. On the right hand side, I've got a data set that shows the numerical information for two variables, temperature as well as the number of ice cream sales. What we want to do in order for us to construct this scatterplot is for us to identify what is my explanatory variable and my response variable. In this example, it makes more sense for the temperature or the weather conditions to affect the number of ice cream sales generated, and therefore I need to plot temperature for my horizontal axis. In contrast, I therefore plot ice cream sales for my vertical axis, and now I can begin drawing my scatterplot. In order for us to draw it, I therefore look at these two coordinates over here. So remember, that's my x value, that's my y value, and therefore I plot these ordered pairs to draw my scatterplot. And if you do this for each of these ordered pairs of coordinates, you should therefore be able to produce this particular graph on the left-hand side. I just want to draw your attention to two main features. Firstly, you need to incorporate labels, as I said, for your horizontal and your vertical axes, but also make sure that your scales is also consistent. So what I mean by that is that these intervals must therefore be the same as you go across, so therefore it goes up by 2. Now the intervals that you use horizontally do not need to match up to the intervals you use vertically. So as you can see in this example over here, this goes up by 100. So you don't need to make the intervals the same for your horizontal axis as well as your vertical axis. Let's look at another example. Similarly, my first step should be identifying what is my explanatory variable and what is my response variable. So in this case over here, you've got price and the number of shirts sold. In this particular scenario, it makes more sense that the price is therefore going to affect how many shirts that's going to be sold. So therefore, that's my explanatory variable and that's my response variable. And we know that the explanatory variable should be plotted for my horizontal axis. And in this case over here, I'm going to need to choose an appropriate interval. Notice that in this particular example over here, the lowest value is 18 and the highest value is up to 35. So therefore, there's no values from 0 to 18. So therefore, I could skip a few values. And to illustrate that I've skipped a few values, I'm going to represent that using this zigzag line over here. So I'm going to go from 14 to 36, as you can see. And again, you need to make sure you label your axes. So I've done this for my horizontal axis. Now I need to do the same thing for my vertical axis. So I'm going to plot the number of shirts vertically. In this case, the smallest value is 11. So therefore, I can skip the values between 0 to 10, let's say. So again, I could use another zigzag line, and I've also shown this down below. Now that I have set up my axes and labeled them, I can now start to draw my scatterplot. So I need to look at these two coordinates over here so I can plot them. So remember, that's my x value, that's my y value. So therefore 18 is over here, and therefore 21 is over here. So my first dot should be therefore placed right over here. Similarly, I'll do the same thing for the next one. So 18 and 22 should go over here. And likewise, do the same thing for all the other values in the data set. And therefore, this is what your scatterplot should look like at the end. What I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to answer this question. I want you to identify what is the explanatory variable. If you answer this question correctly, the explanatory variable is going to be the amount of time spent training. So remember, the explanatory variable is always plotted for my horizontal or my x-axis. The last part of this video is for me to show you how do we construct a scatterplot using our CAS calculator. So the first step that we need to do is to create a spreadsheet. So therefore, I'm going to open up the spreadsheet over here, and I'm going to put down all the values under the column. So all of this goes down for one particular column, and once I've done that, I do the exact same thing for the other column, okay? So once I've done that, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back onto the main screen. So you do that by pressing this button essentially, and then I'm going to need you to click on this button over here. Once you've done that, click onto this button and choose the explanatory variable. Remember, your response variable goes on your vertical axis, and if you've done this, you should therefore have constructed your scatter plot. What I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to please have a go answering questions from exercise 7b. So for all these questions up here, you're going to need to do this manually as well as by using a CAS calculator. This is the end of the video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys again in the next one. Bye.